God's chosen ones are being attacked. Here's why. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when silence becomes deafening, when the weight of the world rests heavily on your chest, and it feels like life is unraveling thread by thread. You look around and wonder why nothing seems to work out, why betrayal greets you at every corner, why the ones you've helped the most are the first to turn their backs on you. You give love and receive rejection. You try to stay faithful, yet chaos finds you. You pray, and all you get in return is silence. It's in this dark, disorienting space that many people begin to question, what did I do wrong? But perhaps you've been asking the wrong question all along. What if the pain you're going through isn't a punishment, but a sign? What if the relentless attacks, the misunderstandings, the rejection are not random? What if you're one of God's chosen ones? That phrase may sound grandiose. Maybe it makes you uncomfortable. But deep down, something stirs when you hear it. A strange familiarity. A quiet yes. Because being chosen doesn't mean being celebrated. It often means being crushed, stripped down, and set apart. Being chosen is rarely about comfort. It's about calling. And calling comes with a cost. The ones God chooses aren't always the loudest, the richest, or the most followed. They're the ones who have tasted suffering and still choose to love. They've been broken, but somehow they still rise. They carry burdens in silence. They've lost battles most people never even knew they were fighting. But they keep going. These are the ones who walk with invisible crowns, not out of pride, but out of purpose. But here's the hard truth. The chosen are always attacked. Not because they're weak, not because they've done anything wrong, but because of what they carry, because of what they represent. Because darkness always fears the light, especially when it's wrapped in human skin. This world does not celebrate the chosen. It isolates them. It mocks their sensitivity, exploits their kindness, and tries to suffocate their calling with noise and distraction. The attacks are not just physical, they're spiritual, emotional, psychological. The enemy's goal is simple. Wear them down until they forget who they are, until they surrender their identity, until they give up their mission. But not you. Not this time. Because once you understand why you're being attacked, everything begins to change. You no longer see your suffering as punishment, but as preparation. You no longer feel like a victim, but a vessel. This message is for those who have felt like giving up, for those who have been wandering in the wilderness, wondering if God has forgotten them. You haven't been forgotten. You've been chosen. And this is the reason the attacks have come. The identity of God's chosen ones. Who are they really? They walk among us, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and often misunderstood. They are not dressed in gold or crowned with praise. They don't command stages or seek applause. They're the quiet ones in the room, the ones who listen more than they speak, the ones who feel deeply, love fiercely, and break silently. These are God's chosen ones. But let's clear something up. Being chosen by God is not about superiority. It's not about being more righteous, more intelligent, or more deserving than others. In fact, it's often the complete opposite. The chosen are the ones who were rejected first, the ones who were overlooked, abandoned, and cast aside. They are the brokenhearted, the wounded healers, the ones who cried themselves to sleep more times than they can count, and yet still woke up and kept going. You see, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And his chosen ones are often forged in the fire, not found in the spotlight. The world teaches us that greatness comes with titles, followers, fame, and wealth. But God's definition of greatness is different. He looks at the heart. And often, the hearts that have been shattered the most are the ones that carry the deepest capacity for love. They are chosen not because of what they have, but because of what they've endured and what they're willing to surrender. God's chosen ones are people who've known suffering intimately. They've lost things they never thought they could live without. People, dreams, even parts of themselves. And in that loss, they were refined. Stripped of ego, stripped of illusion, left with nothing but the raw, unfiltered truth of who they are and who God is. These are the people who, even when they had every reason to quit, refused to stop believing. Even when they were surrounded by darkness, they kept a spark alive inside their soul, a quiet knowing that they were meant for more, that their pain had purpose, that their story wasn't over yet. They are the ones who, when pushed to the edge, didn't fall. They flew. But don't mistake their gentleness for weakness. Don't mistake their silence for ignorance. These are warriors of the Spirit. They fight battles no one sees. They carry burdens no one else would understand. And yet, they do so with grace. They forgive when others would seek revenge. They love when others would hate. They choose faith over fear, purpose over popularity, conviction over convenience. And because of that, they are dangerous to the darkness. The enemy doesn't fear the proud or the loud. He fears the obedient. He fears the ones who walk in humility, clothed in the power of God, unshaken by the world's applause or rejection. He fears those who cannot be bought, manipulated, or seduced. Those who know who they are, and more importantly, whose they are. So who are God's chosen ones? They are the cycle breakers, the ones who refuse to repeat the generational trauma passed down to them. They are the truth tellers, the ones who speak light even when their voice trembles. They are the intercessors, the ones who pray behind closed doors for a world that mocks them. They are the protectors, the ones who stand between the innocent and harm. They are the rebuilders, the ones who take the ruins of their life and build sanctuaries for others. They are the visionaries, the ones who see beauty where others see ashes. They are the quiet revolution that heaven whispers through. And most of all, they are the ones who say yes to the call, even when it costs them everything. If you've ever wondered why your life has been so hard, if you've ever asked why you feel so deeply, why you see things others don't, if you've ever felt like an outsider, a misfit, a black sheep in your own family, maybe it's because you were never meant to fit in. You were born to stand apart. There's a holy tension inside the chosen, a deep yearning to live in truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, a burden to carry light into the darkest corners of the world, even when it hurts. You were not created to blend in. You were created to disrupt, to awaken, to shine. And yes, it's exhausting. It's lonely. It's painful. But it's also sacred. It's divine. It's purposeful. Because everything the enemy tried to destroy in you, your sensitivity, your empathy, your vision, your voice, those were the exact things God intended to use to bless the world. You are not broken. You are being built. You are not weak. You are being strengthened. You are not forgotten. You are being set apart. And so, if your life has felt like a battlefield, don't be discouraged. You are not under attack because you're doing something wrong. You are under attack because you're carrying something right. You are dangerous to hell because heaven has placed something priceless inside of you. You are one of God's chosen ones. And the world needs you now more than ever. Why they're being attacked, the real spiritual war. Many of God's chosen ones are walking through life under heavy attack, and they don't even realize why. They think they're being punished. They think something is wrong with them. They wonder why, despite their best intentions, life keeps hitting them harder than most. But the truth is far more powerful and far more dangerous to the darkness. You are not under attack because you're weak. You are under attack because you are a threat. When God marks someone for a higher purpose, that person automatically becomes a target in the spiritual realm. The enemy doesn't waste energy on the indifferent. He doesn't bother with those who are already lost in distraction, ego, and false identities. No, he goes after the ones who are waking up. The ones who are beginning to question the lies, the systems, and the shallow versions of truth that have kept them bound for years. He targets the ones who are stepping into light, the ones who are rediscovering their voice, reclaiming their purpose, and rising from the ashes. That's why you're being attacked. It's not because you did something wrong. It's because you started doing something right. When you begin to break generational patterns, darkness fights back. When you choose to forgive instead of seek revenge, when you pray instead of panic, when you start living with intention instead of habit, something shifts in the unseen. Hell takes notice. The intensity of your opposition is a direct reflection of the magnitude of your calling. If you felt like your whole life has been a battlefield, that's not a coincidence. The enemy saw your potential before you even knew you had it. That's why the attacks started early. That's why trauma hit you when you were young. That's why betrayal came from the people who were supposed to protect you. It was all part of the strategy. Crush your spirit before it could rise. But here's the truth. You're still here. You're still breathing, still moving, still searching for light. That in itself is evidence that God has not let go of you. And yet, the attacks haven't stopped. Because the more aligned you become with your divine identity, the more dangerous you become to the kingdom of darkness. The enemy doesn't fear people who go to church on Sunday and live in fear the rest of the week. He fears the ones who embody faith every day, who love deeply, who walk in humility, and who are unshaken by rejection. The enemy fears the ones who pray in silence and obey without applause. Because obedience is the greatest act of spiritual warfare. Obedience to purpose. Obedience to truth. Obedience to your calling, even when it costs you everything. Spiritual attacks don't always look like demons in the night. Most of the time, they look like depression that makes no sense, sudden anxiety that has no source, opportunities falling through, loved ones turning on you, confusion, loneliness, emotional heaviness. You start to question your worth, your direction, even your sanity. That's not coincidence. That's warfare. And the goal is not to kill you. It's to wear you down until you surrender your calling. Until you say, maybe I'm not chosen. Maybe I made all of this up. Maybe I should just give up. That's what darkness wants, your agreement. Because once you agree with the lie, you cut yourself off from the truth that could have set you free. But here's something the enemy doesn't want you to realize. He cannot steal your purpose. He can only tempt you to abandon it. He cannot cancel your assignment. He can only distract you from it. And he will use whatever tool necessary. Busyness, heartbreak, addiction, shame, fear of rejection. Anything that will keep you too tired or too numb to walk in your divine authority. That's why awareness is critical. You have to learn to recognize spiritual warfare when it comes, or else you'll keep fighting people, circumstances, and even yourself, not realizing you're being manipulated from a deeper level. There's a real war happening, and it's not between good and bad people. It's between light and darkness, truth and lies, freedom and bondage. And chosen ones are right in the middle. You've been placed in the crossfire not because you're weak, but because you're meant to shift the outcome. You are not just a target. You are a weapon. Every time you choose love over hatred, every time you rise when life tells you to quit, every time you speak truth in a world addicted to lies, you strike a blow against darkness. And that's why it fights so hard to stop you. But it won't win unless you let it. The moment you realize the truth of who you are is the moment you become unstoppable. You're not a victim. You're a vessel. The pain you've carried has prepared you. The rejection you've faced has refined you. The fire you've walked through has not consumed you. It has forged something unshakable inside you. Every battle has been part of the training. Every tear has been a seed. Every loss, a redirection. You were never being punished. You were being positioned, not for comfort, but for impact. Not to live quietly, but to walk boldly in the authority that was placed on your life before you were ever born. The attacks are real, yes, but so is your power. So is your anointing. So is your mission. So is your God. And he does not abandon those he chooses. You may feel surrounded, but you are not alone. You may feel weak, but you are not defeated. You may be under attack, but that only means you're worth attacking. Because you carry something this world desperately needs. You carry light. You carry healing. You carry the message of hope, and the enemy will do anything to silence it. But don't let him. Stand up. Speak out. Keep going. You are chosen. You are covered. And no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Not if you remember who you are and whose you are. What you must do. How the chosen ones can rise again. Now that you know who you are and you understand why you've been under attack, the most important question remains. What do you do now? How do you rise after being torn down again and again? How do you move forward when everything in you wants to give up? How do you stay strong when your soul is exhausted and your heart feels broken beyond repair? The answer is not about pretending to be strong. It's not about forcing joy or faking faith. It's about remembering who you are, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. God never promised an easy path for his chosen, but he promised purpose in the pain, restoration after the breaking, and strength beyond your own when you reach the end of yourself. This is where true rising begins, in surrender, not striving. The first thing you must do is stop running from the silence. Too often, the chosen try to fill every moment with noise to avoid facing the depth of their wounds. But healing requires stillness. You need quiet to hear God's voice again. He's not in the chaos. He's not in the scrolling, the distractions, or the endless seeking of validation. He speaks in whispers, in the pause, in the empty spaces we fear the most. Go there, be still, and you'll begin to hear again, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Next, you must reclaim your authority. Not the kind that comes from titles or power over others, but spiritual authority. The kind that reminds darkness you know who you are and who sent you. Stand in front of the mirror and speak life over yourself even when you don't feel it. Speak as if your soul needs to remember, I am chosen. I am protected. I am not forgotten. I am still called. The power of life and death is in the tongue. Use it to resurrect the parts of you that have been buried by fear. You must also armor your mind. The battlefield of the chosen is often internal. Your thoughts are under siege daily. Doubt creeps in quietly. Lies wear the mask of logic. Shame whispers in the voice of your past. That's why your thoughts must be filtered through truth, not emotion. When the lie says you're not good enough, respond with the truth. God doesn't choose the qualified. He qualifies the chosen. When the lie says you're alone, remember, even if my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Guard your thoughts like sacred ground, because they are. Then, you must forgive. Deeply, ruthlessly, not for them, for you. Unforgiveness is one of the sharpest weapons used against the chosen. It poisons your soul from the inside. It blinds you to your own growth. It chains you to the very pain you were meant to overcome. Yes, they hurt you. Yes, they betrayed you. Yes, they didn't understand who you were. But if they could have seen the weight of your calling, maybe they would have handled your heart with more care. Forgive them anyway, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. And now, perhaps most importantly, get back up. Even if you're crawling, even if your heart is heavy, even if your faith is flickering like a dying flame. Rise anyway, not because everything is okay, but because your story is not finished. The enemy attacked you because you carry something he can't control. He tried to silence you because your voice was going to set others free. He tried to bury you because he was afraid of what would happen if you ever bloomed. But you're still here. And if you're still here, God is not done. Get back to your purpose. Maybe it's time to write again, to speak again, to build again, to pray again. You don't need all the answers. You just need the next step. Trust isn't built on full clarity. It's built on obedience, one faithful act at a time. And when you walk by faith, heaven walks with you. Lastly, surround yourself with others who carry light. The chosen are often isolated, not because they're meant to be alone forever, but because they needed time to learn to stand on their own. But at some point, you must reconnect. Find those who speak truth, who see the real you, who fan your flame instead of smother it. God didn't design you to carry your calling in silence forever. There are people out there praying for someone like you to rise so they can remember their own strength. So now you know. You were attacked because you were chosen. You were broken because you were powerful. You were betrayed because your light exposed what others wanted hidden. But none of it was the end. It was all part of the preparation. This world needs you, not perfect, but present. Not flawless, but faithful. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to stand. Because when a chosen one rises, the ground shakes. Chains break. Generations shift. Light floods in. So rise, not just for you, but for everyone watching who doesn't yet know they're chosen too. You are still the one. And nothing, not fear, not failure, not the fires you've walked through, can change that.